Father Silvio Roja is a great devotee of Simon Sruji, and we are very happy to have him in the Department of Formation. So Father Silvio, we are happy to have you, even if we don't have the jacket. Okay, so this is Sruji, okay? Can we go ahead, please? Before Zakti and Sandor, there was Sruji. We have said that already. Wonderful brother Salesian, born in Nazareth, lived briefly in Bethlehem, and the rest of his life in a place called Bet Jamal in the Holy Land. Okay, so a few things about his early life in Nazareth and Bethlehem. But before that, Sruji was declared venerable in 1993. Okay, he is still venerable. Why is he still venerable, and why has he not gone forward? Because no one prays for a miracle. All that is needed now is a miracle. Everything else, all the work has been done. Why does no one pray for a miracle? Because people have forgotten. We have forgotten Simon Sruji. With Sruji, along with Sruji, two other women of the Holy Land were declared venerable. They are both saints today. Sruji remains where he is, and the people of the Holy Land say, you Salesians, you have forgotten Sruji. So dear brothers, dear confreres, priests and brothers, today we must remember Sruji, and I request you to begin praying, to spread this, the name of this wonderful Salesian brother. Okay? So Sruji was born, as I said, in Nazareth in 1877. This is a picture, you can see it vaguely. Nazareth in 1894. For those of you who have gone to the Holy Land, Nazareth is no longer like that. It is a large Arab city of Belloni. Belloni is practically the founder of our work in the Holy Land, because he had begun a congregation called the Holy Family Congregation. And eventually he went to Don Bosco and asked that to join the Salesians. The two congregations were fused. Anyway, Simon began, he went to the orphanage founded by Belloni in Bethlehem. Let's go ahead. This is a picture from the 1890s of the orphanage of Bethlehem. If you go to Bethlehem, I hope you do go. Please don't forget to visit the Salesian house, the provincial house in Bethlehem. It is largely this building. In the Holy Land, things last a long time. 100 years is not a long time. This is today our technical school and the provincial house, okay? The sisters' house is that one there, but the sisters have gone away, FMAs, but the house is still there, okay? Let's go ahead. What did Sruji do, the young boy Sruji in Bethlehem? He learned trades, tailoring, baking. This is a photo from those years of the tailoring workshop. And Bethlehem, as you know, means the house of bread. So bread is important in Bethlehem. The Salesians still have a famous bakery, and people buy bread. Anyone who eats Salesian bread is called Salesian in Bethlehem. You know, you introduce yourself in Arab, Ana Salesian, and they will say, I also am Salesian, because I eat the bread. Okay, let's go ahead. Okay, so a few pictures, a few notes about Simon Sruji's early, his vocation and his early formation. Let's go ahead. In 1892, Simon was sent to the house of Bet Jamal. Father Belloni had bought places in Bethlehem, Kremisan, Bet Jamal, Nazareth. All of the 5 places in the Holy Land, 4 of them were bought by Father Belloni. The house in Jerusalem belongs to the Holy See, and we were asked to occupy it, not to use it. But Simon was sent in 1892 to Bet Jamal. Bet Jamal comes from the word Bet Kamal. It is supposed to be the house, the property of Gamaliel, the teacher of St. Paul. Okay? So we believe that this is a very special place, the house of Gamaliel, where we believe St. Stephen was buried after being killed, stoned in Jerusalem. His body, according to the Acts of the Apostles, was carried out of Jerusalem and buried somewhere. We believe he was buried in this house of Gamaliel, Bet Jamal. Suruji is there. 1892, the Salesians have already arrived. In 1891, 25 brothers and fathers came to the Holy Land, and the congregations were joined together. And this is important, but we just want to know that Suruji, attracted by the Salesians, asked to join the Salesians and was accepted as an aspirant. Let's go ahead. This is a note from the house archives of Bethlehem. Simon Suruji, etc., born, entered, admitted as an aspirant, accepted as a novice, lay brother Baker. Okay? Date of birth mistaken. Okay, let's go ahead. This is a view of the house of Bet Jamal in the 1890s, the late 1890s. Most likely Simon or Simon did his novitiate in this house. Things are not very clear, you can imagine. Okay, but let us say this is a view of the house. This house still exists. Once again, if you go to the Holy Land, some of you go regularly, I'm sure you have seen this beautiful house of Bet Jamal. Let's go ahead. Immediate preparation for the first profession at the formation house of Kremisan. And I believe there might be some here who have also done their formation in Kremisan, okay? You can see the clerics in their cassocks. We cannot see Simon here, but this is just for you to have an idea of the place. Let's go ahead. The formula of first profession signed by Suruji. I, the undersigned, etc. It's a very simple formula of profession, and this is it. First profession, 31st of October, 1896. Let's go ahead. And this is from the Register of Brothers in the Provincial Archives. Details once again about Simon Suruji. Something like this we still keep in our provincial archives. Please go ahead. And so here we have the simple life of Simon Suruji. First profession, 1896. Perpetual profession, 1900. And the rest of his life in Bet Jamal. Today I want to speak to you about 3 points which you recognize very well. Suruji, servant of the young and of the poor. Suruji, prophet of fraternity, the man of community. Suruji, mystic in the spirit. In short, Suruji, the Salesian religious brother. And as someone said already this morning, it's wonderful to see brothers like Zakti and Suruji so deeply aware of their identity, of the whole extent of their identity. Salesian, consecrated brother. Okay, so the first point, Suruji as servant of the young and of the simple people living around Bet Jamal. Let's go ahead. In his early years, as you can imagine, Suruji was appointed assistant of the boarders. And who were these boarders? Many of them were extremely poor boys, many of them orphans from the Armenian genocide. So many of these boys were accepted by the Salesians. They had seen their fathers and mothers being killed in front of their eyes, and Suruji was their brother assistant. What is remarkable is that this young man had an instinctive understanding of the preventive system. And I want to stress this. No? Simon Suruji is a Salesian educator. Truly, as we said this morning of Zakti, educator and pastor. We have these testimonies. This is in rather small font, but they are testimonies of, the first one is of one of his past pupils, remembering Suruji in later years. And the past pupil says, I knew many fathers and brothers in Bet Jamal. They were all good. But there was no one like Suruji who distinguished himself for his goodness. Many other testimonies like this from his past pupils. A man who was able to touch the hearts of the boys. And he was not just a good Salesian brother. He could also exercise fraternal correction. I think it was a priest confrere who was harsh with the boys, and we find Simon Sruji telling the priest confrere, they are small, these boys. They are orphans. We must be their parents, helping them, correcting them when they make mistakes, but never offending them. We must educate them using neither rod nor hands, nor even harsh language. A small little insight, but it gives you an insight into the capacity of this simple brother to practice the preventive system. Let's go ahead. One of the pictures of those early days, boys, Salesians and others, you can see that they are digging something. In those days, the Salesians, as always Salesians, they wanted to extend their building. And when they began digging, as happens in the Holy Land, they found some ruins. That happened to be the mosaics of a 5th century church, a Byzantine church, which they discovered eventually was a church dedicated to Saint Stephen. Eventually, archaeological excavations were conducted, studies were done, and not everyone accepts it, but many people, many scholars believe that this was the place where Saint Stephen was buried. Okay? Anyway, the Salesians found that place and built a church there. This is just a picture from those days. Another picture, conference and borders with the Armenian bishop. I cannot spot Sruji here. Can you? Okay, whatever. One of the pictures. Here he is very clear. Sruji preparing youngsters for First Communion. So here he is with his borders that he prepared for First Communion. 1934, 1942. You can see him there getting old already. Let's go ahead. So educator and pastor among the boys, the boarders in the house, but also educator and pastor in the neighborhood. Today, Bet Jamal is a beautiful piece of property next to a very strongly vibrant, growing Jewish town called Bet Shemesh. Bet Shemesh is a biblical name. This is the new city of Bet Shemesh, full of Orthodox Jews. We have great pressure from them. But in the days of Simon Sruji, this area was very poor and completely Muslim. So our house was surrounded by Muslim villages. In order to reach out to the population, the community began an olive press, or they put the olive press and the flour mill at the service of the villagers. They also began a small dispensary. Sruji was put in charge of all three: olive press, the flour mill, and the dispensary. Soon the sick began flocking to him. This is so amazing, just like Zati, They began flocking to him, and the Salesians would get doctors from nearby towns every week, maybe every month, but the people preferred to go to Sruji. They said, in the hands of this man is the power of God. And these are Muslim villagers. They respected him tremendously. They said, Sruji is tamam, perfect. When he died, they said, only one thing was missing. He wasn't Muslim. After Allah, Sruji. And he in turn would say, take the name of Jesus, Jesus is the healer. Pray to Our Lady, Sitti Maryam. You know that our Muslim brothers and sisters revere Jesus as a prophet and Mary his mother. It's interesting to see what the Quran says about Jesus and Mary. So this humble Salesian brother was able to lead his neighbors to take the names of Jesus and Mary. I want to make a small note here because it helps us understand the nature, the heroicity of Sruji. We must remember that Christians in the Holy Land do not usually have good feelings towards their Muslim neighbors. It's not easy for them. They have lived under Muslim domination for centuries. So usually it's difficult for a local confrere to work well with the Muslim neighbors. And this makes Simon Sruji's apostolate even more remarkable. This man not only worked with his Muslim neighbors, he loved them. He believed they were equally children of God. And it was an exemplification, I think, of the Article 95 that we quoted this morning. Immersed in the cares of the pastoral life, the Salesian learns to meet God through those to whom he is sent. Simon learned to see God and meet God in these poor people who were coming to him with great faith. Let's go on now to a series of photos from those years. Please go ahead. This is a photo of the olive press and the mill. We had an agricultural school that in its time was the best in Palestine. The British government, which was there in those days, gave us the award for being the best agricultural school in its time. Today, of course, we can't do anything because we don't have, the Israelis will not come to us. Okay, let's go ahead. A view of Kremizan. The dispensary was built somewhere towards the left at the entrance gate. Next. Please go ahead. This is a view of the dispensary. Imam Suruji was, of course, not in any way trained to run the infirmary. He was helped by a Salesian sister. As you know that, the Salesian sisters worked with us for many years in the Holy Land, living in one part of the house, in Kremizan, in Bet Jamal, and in Bethlehem. You can see Suruji faintly there, standing at the door of the dispensary. Next. Here he is in his white doctor's coat, and the people started calling him Hakim, doctor. Next. I think the largest number of patients were women and children, and you can see some of them here, co-villagers, Suruji down there with the cap, and for those who couldn't come up because they were tired or too weak or too embarrassed to come, after finishing his work, he would go down to the village quietly and treat people. Let's go ahead. Next. So this is Suruji, a small man, built to obey rather than to command. And it was this man who became master. People called him Hakim, people called him Muallim, Master Suruji. And this is the paradox, no? We can become masters only if we first learn to live as disciples. Suruji was a missionary disciple. Next. And I want to say this also. Suruji was not the only one working with the villagers, the Muslim villagers. All the confreres in the community, we need to say, had good relationships with the villagers. But the ones who really had a profound involvement in the lives of the villagers were the Salesian brothers. And this is remarkable, that Suruji was one of many who were deeply involved, especially brothers who were deeply involved in the lives of villagers around him. So, it does not matter what work we have. Our mission is not our work. Our mission consists of being signs and bearers of God's love to the young. Dear confrères, this impresses me always. Something that Father Chavez used to say very often. Our mission is not our work. Nowhere in our constitutions we are defined as working for young people or for simple people. Our mission is described in terms of being signs and bearers of God's love to the young. If our mission is working, at some point we will come to the end of our mission when we cannot work. If our mission is being signs and bearers, I think it continues. It continues even when we are sick, even when we might not be able to do any work, because it is a question of manifesting what is there within. Let's go ahead. So, Suruji, the prophet of fraternity. Here also we have a few interesting things to say. I told you that in 1891, 25 brothers, fathers and sisters came over from Italy to fuse the congregation of the Holy Family. Holy Family Salesians coming together, now all Salesians. But you can imagine when 25 people come to a small congregation that probably was of the same number. No? Things were not easy. The relationships were not easy between local confreres and people coming from another land far away. It was in this situation that Sruji began his early formation. About many of the confreres on both sides, there were many things that the superiors had to say. Don Rua came not once but twice to try to calm down the situation. Don Rua has left his testimony about Sruji. About Sruji, no one speaks badly. Don Rua and every provincial that comes after him, we keep on hearing them say about Sruji, this man is exceptional. It is said that Don Rua said of Sruji, this man is a saint, take care of him. But maybe there is not enough evidence to establish that point. This much is clear. Sruji, in a very difficult community situation, learned to be a brother to all. And here it is a challenge to all of us. All of us, we are proud to be who we are, from the culture that we come from we belong to our nations, and it is right that we are proud. But Sruji also shows us how we can still be brothers across cultures. Here we see him with some other confreres, both local and European. In the First World War, you can imagine the tensions emerged again. And this time, some of the local confreres, the Arab confreres, tried to enlist Sruji in the cause. And once again, we find Sruji gently maintaining his independence. His biographer says this was probably the greatest trial in his life, community life. Okay? But Sruji knew how to be brother. All the testimonies we have speak about him always as with this ability to be a brother. And it is wonderful that from that community, it is Sruji who has been recognized as worthy of the altars. Let's go ahead. This is the note from Rua. There was a sort of correspondence between Rua and Sruji because they met twice when Rua came to the Holy Land. And here we find on Rua saying, Dearest Sruji, I have received your letter. I congratulate you on your willingness to serve the Lord in His holy house. I see that you are happy. Courage, continue like that. I in my turn wish you a happy Easter, most affectionately, and so on. Rua. Let's go ahead. Another picture of those years with the youngsters looking very happy, and one of them behind, perhaps the one with the cap, is the canonical visitor, the provincial making his visitation. Sruji is down there. All the others seem to be rectors, and here is Sruji among the rectors of the little area or delegation in the spirit. Brother Gianni Caputa, who is the vice postulator of the cause of Simon Sruji, has recently published the writings of Sruji. We have found Sruji's diaries which contain his projects of life, or what we used to say in those days, used to call them the retreat resolutions. No? And it is remarkable to see the kind of person who emerges from here. A man who is deeply aware of the Blessed Trinity and of his Salesian consecrated vocation. This is from his diary. The acts of the religious, even if small and simple, are precious and accepted by God when done to please and give glory to God. How happy and blessed I am for being consecrated body and soul to God. How much I must do to be pure and chaste like an angel in His sight. How much I must be careful not to stain in the least my soul and my body, temple of the Holy Trinity. Dear confreres, this is remarkable for a man who was not educated formally. Deep awareness of the Trinity and of his own consecrated vocation. So Sruji comes across to us not just as a good Samaritan, but as one who lived his faith and his vocation. Let's go ahead. And now you find a series of slides containing excerpts from the diaries of Sruji. I will never complain about hardships and unpleasant things. I want to be very careful to do everything out of obedience. Next, we see him talking about keeping all his accounts well, keeping his books well. Let's go ahead. It seems he had learned even to write Italian. He writes Arabic and he writes Italian, both. Okay? And so these are what you will find in the diaries of Sruji. I will not go through all of these for you now. Let's go ahead. Okay, some more things from his diaries. Personal pan of life. Next. One more. And then the last years. Okay? Let's go ahead to the next slide. This is from his sister, or a letter to his sister. Sruji had gone to Father Belloni's orphanage. His sister had been put into an Anglican orphanage. She became Protestant. And this was one of those causes of great suffering for Sruji. Kept on writing to her, come back and so on. But this is one of his last letters to his sister, talking about himself. I am ill. I think that the end of my pilgrimage is not far away, since I have breathing difficulties, heartache and little strength. All this tells me get ready to meet God. Next. Sruji lived all his life in this one house of Bet Jamal. And we'll say, wow, no, simple. You live in the same house, you don't move, you don't have any obediences. But there's a testimony from one of the provincials of his time about the value of the fact that Sruji lived in Bet Jamal all his life. It seems that Bet Jamal was only for the donkeys. Even the practical trainees would run away from Bet Jamal. It was in this kind of house that Sruji lived all his life. When we understand the context, simple things become meaningful, okay? So it looks like it was not so easy. And as Sruji spent his whole life there without ever changing and without asking for a change. Next. Last picture of Sruji, the last passport photo, and this is what we have in many of the pictures that have been distributed. Okay. Next. His tomb in the crypt of the Church of St. Stephen. So Sruji is buried there in Bet Jamal. Next. I said this already. After the funeral, one of the Muslims said, "What a pity Sruji is Christian. If he were a Muslim, we would make him one of our holy men." And I think this is unique in the history of canonizations. At the process of canonization, there were Catholics, of course, who gave their testimony, Orthodox Christians from Nazareth, but also many Muslims who gave their testimony about Sruji. And this is wonderful. I think the time has come for Sruji to become more visible. In this moment, when the world and the church in its own way is facing a particular moment of interaction with the world of Islam, Sruji is a great example of the dialogue of life. There are many other figures like him. Many of you have heard of Christian de Chergé, extraordinary figure in the dialogue with Islam, and Father Franz, who was murdered in Syria some years ago during the conflict with the ISIS and so on. No? Paolo Dall'Olio from Italy, who is still missing and perhaps he's dead. He walked over to the ISIS to dialogue with them. Sruji is one of these people who show us a way to remain fully Christian and yet to show the merciful face of the Father to people who cannot call God Father. Our Muslim brethren cannot call God Father because they think it implies having a mother. So God, sex in God and all that. No. So no father. But Sruji is one of those people who showed the merciful, the fatherly face of God to his Muslim neighbors. Next. Something written on the gravestone by Father Forti. He calls Simon Sruji the concittadino di Gesù, the country cousin, we can say. Jesus' country cousin coming from Nazareth. Next. And the decree of venerability in 1993, signed by John Paul II. Next. And Simon Sruji, mystic, brother and servant, uneducated, deeply aware of his Salesian consecrated vocation, profoundly holy with an instinctive grasp of the system, educator and pastor everywhere. a man of communion, prophet of fraternity, humble witness to brotherhood. I said this already, a sign and bearer of God's love even to his Muslim brothers and sisters. Next. And this is a prayer that perhaps we can recite together before we break up into our groups. Prayer to Simon Sruji. Let's say it together. If you can read it from where you are. Simon, you spent your Salesian life pouring the balm of God's merciful love upon afflicted bodies and souls as a minister of healing and reconciliation. Look to our distressed humanity today, especially in the Middle East. Intercede for us with God, that we too, imitating St. Stephen and Don Bosco, may be signs and bearers of the love of God to young and poor people everywhere, and in so doing we may attain the perfection of our Christian and Salesian vocation. Next. Various pictures of Suruchi. Next. Bet Jamal as it is today. I had only this very bad picture of the house as it is now. It's a lovely house, okay? Much better than what you can see. And thanks to Father Gianni Caputa, most of the pictures are from him, and the slide program, of course, is pirated and worked upon from him. So we remember also Gianni Caputa today, Vice Postulator. And once again, dear conference, don't forget, let's pray through the intercession of this great confrere of ours in the Commission Department. Whenever we have problems, we turn to Sruji, and in all the little things, he always comes to our aid. We have not dared to ask him for the big things yet, but someone needs to have the courage to ask him for some, if God so wishes, one miracle to push him up to greater visibility in the church and in the world. Thank you, and now you have time for your discussion in groups. It would be nice if you can report the discussion, but there is not going to be an assembly in which there will be time for sharing what you do. So please send, it would be nice if you can send the reports to Father Silvio, and I think you want to say something about the discussion?
Well, big thanks to Father Ivan, his passion, and the remote control is working. So we have the picture was already examined by more than 8 medical doctors from the Philippines and also from the Vatican. The process is going on. So when we listen to Brother Obed, we may get some hint. What does it mean to hang on the intercession of our saints? After this short video, instruction for the groups.